Hello everyone guys, gals and non-binary pals. There's going to be a shorter intro this time because I'm counting down 10 games this time. I didn't play all the fancy games this year, so maybe Call of Duty may have gotten on the list, but I didn't play it because I wasn't kicked repeatedly in the head by a horse and lost all ability to have taste. Some of these games have got some coverage already, so I'll link to that below. Also, I want to add that I shuffled this list quite a bit. Pretty much anything from 6 could have been the game of the year. And I mean, going into 2020, I'm probably, going to play some of these games a bit more, and I might even shuffle them a little bit, in my mind. But to get started, it is worth noting that in the worst games list, I had quite a fair share of my favorite genre, but there were some mystery games that weren't absolute dog shit, so we have number 10, which is Telling Lies. It's always great to see a developer that gets like a hit indie game going, but it always sets a bit of a high bar for whatever they're going to be releasing next. But, when you see a second game clear that bar, that's awesome. And this was kind of the case for Sam Barlow, the designer most popular for his mystery database Search 'em Up, Her Story, and now we have Telling Lies. There are probably some people who are going to be like, oh, it's just another Her Story. You are, idiots who probably didn't play it because it looked like there were so many women on the cover. The concept is pretty much still the same. You search keywords in an engine and it returns the first few videos in which that word appears in the dialogue. And it's a simple idea, but it is a smart way to ensure that you're kind of progressing from surface level information to real damning stuff later in the archive. Telling Lies does some nice things such as being able to select new search terms directly from the subtitles, even though I would have liked a go to the start of the video button rather than scrubbing through, because some of those things are 10 minutes long, and even if you're, going as fast as possible, it's still going to be a minute of sitting there. Otherwise, this kind of feels like a whole elevation of the Her Story concepts. You have more database to choose through, and also a lot of the videos are only representing half of a conversation, so even being able to figure out everything that's happening in a single conversation could take a bit of time. And on top of that, we've got some crazy soap opera kind of twists, and it's just a great thing to dive into. I'd very much suggest, having kind of a weekend free, grabbing a notepad and just sinking some hours into this. But this isn't actually the only great mystery on the market. So, for example, we have number 9, which is Judgement. Despite the fact that Judgement is, very poorly spelled, see me after class, it's quite a competent little open world mystery game. It's developed by the people behind Yakuza, even though this time it's on the other side of the law. Well, sort of, you get a little bit buddy-buddy with all manner of Yakuza anyway. Judgement is a nice little game with a good blend of mystery gameplay in a really well-crafted open world. So, you'll have mystery gameplay stuff like you have to ask witnesses the relevant questions, and you have to find vantage points, and you have to break into areas and all that kind of stuff. And also, on top of that, you'll obviously have the Yakuza kind of minigame stuff. Simply put, they just knew how to tell a good story, they knew how to craft a good mystery, and there isn't really a lot more that you can ask for. Well, I guess I can ask for one thing, which is I wish I had more time to play this game. It's worth noting for all the entrants 8 to about 4, I was just kind of reshuffling them as I was scripting this whole thing out. And this one's kind of a bit of a victim, it dropped a couple of points. But please understand how hard it was ordering and reordering this, because this was a year of quite a lot of good games. A lot of games that were fairly good. It was actually kind of interesting because seeing all the lists and how everyone has completely different answers for the best game. I don't know, interesting. But anyway, number 8, Life is Strange 2. You could totally argue that my love for Life is Strange 2 has an element of Stockholm Syndrome to it. After all, the game didn't fully complete its arc until a few weeks ago, the season lasting for 14 months. In it, we see the Diaz brothers fleeing from the police after their father is shot by a policeman, and then the younger of the Diaz brothers kinda sorta has telekinetic abilities and kinda sorta kills the cop. So begins a 5-episode arc of the boys trying to escape from the law, trying to keep the whole powers thing on the down low as to not attract attention, as they try and make for the border Mexico, which, admittedly is like a bit weird because I live in Seattle, which is like about as far north as you can get. And I was a little bit weirded out by the fact that, we had this whole narrative where there's kind of only 2 main characters. But, by the end, I kind of learned to respect it. There's a full review, you can check that out. But the thing that I really liked is that this game did not in any way shy away from politics. This is the same year that the developers of The Division 2, which is about like a secret kind of organized crime-fighting division that, uses a lot of guns and is fighting against terrorists in the political capital of America, which is Washington, D.C. And the developers of this game were like, well, this isn't a political game. Meanwhile, we had games like Life is Strange 2 that was just diving directly into police brutality and racism against Hispanic people and child abuse and the militarization of the border between Mexico and the United States. Like, it completely didn't hold back. And I know there are some people that are like, oh, well, we don't need politics in games. I think, having at least some games, not all games have to become political, but it's kind of interesting if games try that. It kind of just feels like Don't Know is going from strength to strength in terms of the games that they are putting out. We had Remember Me a while ago. Oh, I remember that. But Life is Strange is very good, and Life is Strange Before the Storm is very good, and now Life is Strange 2 is pretty good. I'm very excited to see what they're doing with Tell Me Why. That is very much a game I'm looking forward to next year. Trans person right there as one of the protagonists, which I'm very enthusiastic about, and I'd love to see what they're doing. But for the moment, Life is Strange 2 exists. It's very cool. I would recommend you play it. I think it might be coming out on Game Pass. If it is, you have even less excuse. But now I want to talk about a game that no one has really been talking about in the lead up to this, and that is Yuppie Psycho. And I'd like to congratulate Yuppie Psycho for winning the Drop Mix Monster Prom Award for Underrated Gem that basically no one knew about until I told them about it. But it's really good. So check it out, Game Award. So there's nothing I love more than being able to pimp out a rad game that totally deserves more love. And Yuppie Psycho is a really awesome game. It is focused on the most terrifying of the capitalist centerpieces, the cubicle farm. You have brain-dead co-workers who are turned into zombified monsters. You have these giant printers clambering about on human hands. And there are many other terrifying and at times kind of surreally comedic monsters that are going about the halls of Sintracorp. And part of the reason that they're kind of surreally comedic is you're kind of playing through this entire game as this new employee to the place, Brian Pasternak, who's, just kind of this, kind of shaggy, nerd-esque kind of character. Who's, navigating all the halls and virtual environments and, sites of massacres and mystical woods that are just inside this building, and also all the office politics to hunt down. And he's doing all this to hunt down the witch that has cursed this otherwise perfectly nice office space. So basically, visually it's gorgeous. It's got some beautiful, beautiful lore. And, even the save system has this feeling to it of trapping the character. It's a great little vibe. I will be honest, the save system did worry me a bit, but it's fine. You'll get through it. But now to jump to one of the games that just kind of seemed to sweep through everyone's top indie games list in the past couple of months, and that is number 6, which is Disco Elysium. I will confess that this may have been higher, this may, end up being lower, but it comes down to I just really haven't played this game as much as I wanted to. So understand that I'm pretty impressed with this game to put it so high, despite the fact that I've only kind of played a bit of a slice of it. What you were essentially playing, I guess this kind of also counts as a mystery game. Woo, there've been a bunch of good mystery games this year. Where were they for the last 10 or so? Essentially, you are playing as a guy who later figures out that he is a detective. because he got so smashed that he can't remember anything, which is kind of, it's a bit of a stock standard way of doing gameplay, but at the same time it means like you can just kind of create your character however you want to. But the thing that really impresses me about this game is the writing. Like, this game inundates you with all kinds of crazy choices to do some pretty out there things and drag your characters into all kinds of wild scenarios. And the writing creates this really weird blend of tones that kind of lets you seamlessly slip into kind of comedic antics and tense drama and this kind of weird existential terror. But it never really feels like it's derailing itself. I mean, for God's sake, this game has an idea inventory where you put your ideas and they develop over time, and they have like all kinds of stat influences and also kind of influences the general outline of what your character is like. Like, it brings role-playing into a whole new dimension, allowing us to kind of mold the brain of our character in a way that feels fairly natural. I mean, this title may have come out of nowhere to pull the rug out from under the industry, but it feels like it really could be like a landmark of the genre. Like, we could see kind of this new form of RPG kind of start to rise, like this very narrative RPG, which I'm really into, because we've had games like this before. We've had games like The Council that have been this really interesting fusion of storytelling and character and RPG elements. So cool stuff. Oh my god. Now we move into the top 5, and number 5 is actually going to be my indie game of the year, but I've kind of shuffled things still. We'll get to it. We'll get to the game that kind of just caused all this chaos. But like, real talk, like, this game won my best indie of the year for my episode of my podcast, The Inconsolables, which you should totally check out. It won that in the final episode, in the finale episode of that, and in like a week and a bit, like essentially 2 weeks, I've kind of gone, actually, there's another one that's a little bit better, but it's still a very cool game, and that game is My Friend Pedro. I'm doing a lot of work, unfortunately, bigging up the one that's going to be after this, but My Friend Pedro is very cool. It was my most anticipated indie game of the year, and it really delivered. It kind of aims for what I kind of call the ultra competency fantasy, where, it's kind of like The Matrix or John Wick or, Superhot or Max Payne, where you are just like really fucking good at like shooting things. I know that sounds like really lame. Like, I mean, it's not like the male power fantasy where it's just like, I'm big and muscly and stuff. It's kind of like, I'm fast, I'm good at dodging, I can, shoot things all good like. And I feel like My Friend Pedro just kind of takes it to like the apex of dumb fun. Like, you can skateboard, and you can jump off that skateboard and then kick the skateboard into somebody's face. And then you can slow-mo jump and backflip and all this dumb stuff to mess some people up. I also kind of really like the level design. Like, they did, I thought they did a good job of that. I don't know why I'm talking about that, but I mean, like, there isn't much that I can say other than, look at the thing that I'm doing. It is cool. You can do it too. Like, it very much feels like a game that, you should, like, look at a clip and be like, oh, that's like the trailer, or like, that's pre-rendered or something. It's like, no, you can just do that. Like, that's dope. And regardless of that, it feels like it controls very well. Admittedly, I say that more on the PC. I've tried doing it with a controller. It is alright, but like, it is so much easier with a mouse. And also, like, freaking everybody, I feel like, underestimated this. Everybody was reviewing this saying that it's not replayable, and it, like, 100% is. It's, like, one of the most replayable games I've played. But now, this is the game that caused all the reshuffling. The game that I replayed, and I was like, this needs to be higher. And in many ways, it reminds me of when I was doing like a similar countdown for What Remains of Edith Finch, not only because they're both Annapurna. Annapurna's a very good publisher, eh? But it's similar to What Remains of Edith Finch, while I don't think it was necessarily of the amazing playtime quality that one might see in like the best game of the year, the AAA game of the year. It is way more primed to last in my memory, because this is a game that is visually and orally spectacular, that it's kind of the kind of thing that I can just imagine myself, like 20 years from now being like, oh yeah, that game exists. It is my top indie pick now. I mean, it might change. As I said, lots of good games this year. But for now, my top indie pick, fourth game of the year overall, is Sayonara Wild Hearts. Sayonara Wild Hearts is a short ride. In many ways, it's a simple game. It's only using the joystick and a button to operate. And, I mean, there are some people that I imagine are going to be like, well, it's only an hour long and there's not a lot of, challenge to it, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like the minimalism that is on display is what will lead people to underestimate this game. And I think what it is it's a case of doing a lot with very little. I mean, the controls are just kind of the interfacing of the game and the player. The amazing thing about this game is the visuals and the music. I'll just give you a chance right now to pause the video and go listen to the soundtrack, because it is one of the few gaming soundtracks that I straight up adore. It's like Undertale, and then it's like, Celeste, I suppose, and I guess, some of the Life is Strange stuff, but that's cheating because that's licensed music. But every song I like pretty much, and the ones that have, lyrics and vocals and stuff are just so good. It's all very pop. It's specifically pop. They even advertised it as a pop album interactive music video kind of thing, or something to that effect. And it's just so fresh and it's so zesty and everything. And admittedly, I am talking about the controls and then the game and then the visuals, which also I didn't mention really specifically, but the visuals, oh my god, all the colors, the blues and the magentas and the cyans. Oh, but the thing is, they are connected really well, because the rhythm will not only, be kind of like a rhythm game kind of thing where you have to click things to a beat, but it will also influence when bosses will launch attacks and stuff. So it's kind of, this really interesting spot of it's a rhythm game, but then there's other elements that aren't rhythm game, but you still kind of have to use the rhythm to kind of guide you through it, which is just so interesting, especially as someone who is not only kind of getting into game development, but also someone who is really interested in the audio side of game development. They may start off with little stuff, but Sayonara Wild Hearts takes everything and dials it to 11. They explore so much, and it's, surprising and stuff. And also, speaking of surprising, the reveal of the narrator at the end, that was cool. That seems like a weird way to end a review, but yeah. But let's move into the big leagues. The top three are all AAA games, and the third is Devil May Cry 5. I remember I played my first Devil May Cry game, and it was the reboot, which I thought was alright. There's tons of purist dickheads who was oh, well, actually, it's crap, which admittedly, looking back, I'm just oh yeah, there was that boss that you just yell fuck you at. Well, hindsight is 2020, and the year is 2019, so considering Devil May Cry 5, yeah, I consider, some of those people being dickheads about it. Maybe it's a bit more fair, because I definitely felt like this was, it was such a different vibe. It's slightly jarring, but I also kind of love how, it is very anime, because it's, they're making hey, look, he's being Michael Jackson, but then also there's really crazy dark shit that just randomly happens that's very melodramatic in this game. Do you like that there was kind of different controls for different characters? I thought that was a bit of a nice touch. But mainly it's just you can hit people with half a motorcycle. It's a lot about the gameplay of just it's really fun, it's really fluid, it's really stylish. So yeah, and also speaking of stylish, the title sequence, oh my god, guys, that's excessive. I love it. But Devil May Cry wasn't the only Capcom success. I mean, like, in the first few months of the year, Capcom dropped two of the biggest titles of the year. Like, they were killing it. So, my runner-up is the other very big Capcom game, which was the Resident Evil 2 remake. I mean, it's fair to say I generally don't have remakes on my list of favourite games of the year, but by all accounts, this isn't really a remake. I mean, usually when you think of remake, you think of, like, oh, we just made the texture files, like, a little bit bigger. Which, is more of a, oh, we would like to get more money from this game that we already put out. Whereas this kind of feels like they just kind of, like, steamrolled everything and started over. Like, I mean, I can't say I've played the original, so I can't say, they did this right, they did this wrong. But it's definitely one of the most engrossing horror games I've played. I mean, it looks beautiful, it has detailed environments, and there's, lots that they're doing to create tension pretty organically. I mean, just knowing, oh, there's a zombie near that stairway that I really need to go to is like a really simple way to make, like, what could be a, boring commute, like, a little bit more hectic. But I mean, even then, like, they bring in that hunky boy that follows you all over the place to give you sweet kisses and pound your face out your ass, which is, Mr. X, or the Tyrant, or whatever his name is. And I mean, it's impressive to know that they have a terrifying character who really is just a guy who stomps his feet a bunch, has beefy punches, and most terrifying, can open doors. Which, I mean, like, I joke about that, like, oh, whoa, opening doors, but, like, when you are using doors as kind of like, here's my one way to get around stuff, it's intimidating when it's just like, oh, he's in the place that I am in now, oh dear. I literally had like a point where I was in the library, and I was like, ha ha ha, you're on the bottom floor, I'm on the top floor. And then I almost like shat myself when it was like, oh, he's climbing up the ladder that is very close to me, oh dear. Lots of games would be just like, let's put some jump scares, but this is like, no, this is like proper organic horror. And I mean, it's probably the truest expression of survival horror, because I mean, every time that I headed out, I'd be like, oh, am I going to have enough resources to survive this? If I do, will I have enough resources to survive the next thing? So, you're constantly worried, you're constantly trying to find ways to kind of conserve ammo, but, you still have to get past enemies. And I mean, it's also designed in such a way that it's like, it has to be replayed, which I mean, I don't, necessarily need, but everyone seems to be banging on about it. I kind of just feel like, in general, I've been unlucky that I've gotten into games later than I would have liked. Like, I mean, this is only the second Resident Evil game that I played after Resident Evil 7. Well, third if you count RE4, but I mean, like, I can't deal with those tank controls, guys. But it feels like a well-presented history lesson, not one that feels, like, dusty and all antique-y. It merely parades around why this game is a classic. It feels relevant to be talking about classics because, I mean, also it's my game of the year, but by all accounts, the hype surrounding this came from the fact that the developer had ties to previous games that are considered kind of landmark titles, but I haven't really played them. But this game, it kind of feels like, has learned more than enough in its previous work to create a game that utilized seemingly all of the strengths without any of the disadvantages. The truth is, I may never end up playing the Fallout series, especially given, 76. Like, I mean, it seems like it could be the start of a downward spiral. But I'm definitely a fan of this game. Understand my position. I generally have a bad relationship with RPGs. I mean, I love the idea of slipping into character and building them out to my specifications and choosing how to be that person in the context of the game. But I really struggle because I worry that I'm not good enough at games, and then in an RPG I feel the need to grind to overlevel myself to give myself an advantage, but then I'm just grinding, and it's not fun. But then we have some games like sport RPGs, cough, you should make more sports RPGs, please, cough, that manage to get me through the system, but by making things more fun, or improving on the leveling system, making it more reflective on my actions as a player. And Outer Worlds does both. It uses the mechanics of an FPS to bring in a bit of skill from the player side, which makes it a bit more engaging in just the gameplay loop generally. And also you get rewarded quite a lot for doing just whatever you feel is the right thing to be doing. Not to mention that, and this seems to be quite a trend which I'm very happy for this year. The writing is great. I mean, I'm not saying like writing is generally bad, but I mean like it's notably good. It's kind of also a little bit anti-capitalist, which is an interesting way of bending things. And also, let's be completely honest, it's also the way I bend things, so that's probably a bit unfair, but whatever, it's on my list. And, you know, it is telling a very interesting and a very timely story, which, you know, getting back to the whole political thing, you know, it feels that it's not shying away from those kinds of stories, not shying away from that kind of a discussion, which I appreciate. I'm also just really jazzed as a person who, and I don't really mention this super often, but whatever, I identify as asexual. So having Parvati being cute as a button, and she's ace representation, I mean, that is just very good, and that's just very, you know, I wanted to say enlightening, but that's not right. It just makes me feel very upbeat and chipper. I'm euphoric about this inclusion, especially given that Death Stranding kind of just went in the other direction. That's the one I'm giving it to. I'm gonna give it to Outer Worlds. So, I just want to say, I hope you enjoyed my list, and maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I suppose that's your choice. Please, of course, check out the coverage. And as this is the last video of the year, or maybe the first of the next year, I don't know if I'm going to get enough time to edit this. Either way, I just want to say, for 2019, and previous years, I guess, thank you for all the love and all the support and all the comments and all the subscriptions and donations and everything. I mean, like I always say, you know, please like and comment, blah blah blah. But like, in all seriousness, like it's a lot of work doing this, and it really is awesome to know that, you know, some people are like interested in the stuff I'm doing. And it's always just nice getting to chat to all you lovely guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Honestly, thank you for saying hi and everything. And I will talk to you in either the next year or the current year, whenever this comes out. Anyway, goodbye.